In a quiet village nestled deep in the taiga, there lived an old gamekeeper named Zakar and his granddaughter Lena, who had come to spend the summer with him. Lena had been here before and loved these quiet mornings with the scent of pine, the chirping of birds, and the soft rustle of the river nearby. But this summer was different. Somewhere in the forest, someone was watching them. That someone was a bear, not just any bear, a female bear, whom Zakar had once saved as a cub after her mother was killed by poachers. He had raised her secretly in the woods, fed her, treated her wounds, and when she grew stronger, she returned to the wild. But she never forgot. Zakar named her Amanya, and she often came to visit, always quietly from the forest, standing by the edge of the trees, watching the house. Lena loved her as a child would love a pet, without fear, with tenderness. They even played together when she was small. But now Lena was 17 and Manya was a full-grown bear, heavy and strong. That summer, rumors spread in the region about a dangerous animal seen near the village. Some officials claimed it was a threat to the locals. Someone had clearly reported the bear. One morning, two black SUVs pulled up to Zakar's house. From them stepped people in suits, prosecutors, hunters, a camera crew. They had documents, orders, laws on their side. "You are illegally keeping a wild animal," said the fat man in glasses, waving a paper. Zakar replied calmly, "The animal lives in the forest." "I don't keep anyone." But they didn't care. They began searching the area, taking photos, measuring distances. Lena watched it all with growing fear. She understood. They had come for Manya. In the evening, when the officials left, Lena and Zakar sat on the porch in silence. "What will we do if they come back with weapons?" she asked. "Wait and be ready," Zakar replied, loading his old rifle. Manya came that night. She didn't come to the house, just stood in the dark between the trees. Lena saw her silhouette in the moonlight, her ears twitching, sensing danger. "She knows," whispered Lena. Zakar nodded. She always knew when to come. But this time, even her strength might not be enough, because somewhere in the district center, a man named Krapsov was already preparing documents, mobilizing the militia and hunters, and in his plans there was no room for the bear among the living. "What do we do now?" asked Lena. "Wait and get ready." Zakar took out his rifle and checked the cartridges. Manya sat nearby like a loyal dog before battle, and somewhere in the district center, Krapsov was building his plans. And in those plans, there was no place among the living for the bear. In the morning, 3 vehicles arrived in the village at once: the district police, the sanitary service, and a minibus labeled Hunting Authority. More than a dozen people poured out, men in uniform, with documents, with serious faces. Lena looked out the window and went cold. Manya wasn't in the yard. She had gone into the forest at dawn as usual, but now her absence felt ominous. "Grandpa, they're here," she called. Zakar stepped onto the porch and looked over the procession. Leading them was the familiar district officer, followed by the chief of the district police, a fat man with the rank of major. "Voronov," the major called from the gate. "We have a warrant to seize a dangerous animal." "What animal?" Zakar asked innocently. "Don't play dumb. The bear you're illegally harboring." "I'm not harboring anyone." "The bear's wild, lives in the forest." The major waved papers in the air. "We have witness statements. Yesterday, the beast threatened a prosecutor's representative." "She didn't threaten him. She protected someone from a lout." "That's your version. Officially, keeping a wild animal without a license is punishable by fine and confiscation." Hunters climbed out of the minibus with rifles and nets. Lena spotted a familiar face among them, Igor, one of the spoiled brats from yesterday. Now he wore camouflage and acted as if he were in command. "Grandpa," Lena whispered, "that guy with the hunters. He's one of the ones who—" Zakar squinted and recognized the face. His expression darkened. "Daddy's connections are at work." The major noticed them whispering. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," said Zakar. "Just that your specialist yesterday threatened my granddaughter in the forest." "That's a separate matter. Today we're here about the bear." "There's no bear. She went to the taiga." Igor stepped forward. "He's lying, Major. I saw the animal yesterday, on a leash." "On a leash?" Zakar laughed. "Try putting a leash on that bear." "Enough talk," barked the major. "We'll conduct a search and inspect the territory." The team scattered across the yard. Some searched the sheds, others followed tracks, others set up strange metal structures. "What's that?" Zakar asked, pointing at one of the devices. "Cages, traps," explained Igor, "with bait. The bear goes in, the door shuts. Then we sedate her and send her to a zoo. Or a circus. Or shoot her if she resists, added one of the hunters. Lena's heart skipped. Or, you have no right. We have the right. Here's the documentation for eliminating a threat. Officer Vasily Petrovich approached Zakhar. Look, maybe just tell us where the bear is. I get it, it's a bad situation. But if they find her, it'll be worse. I don't know where she is, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Zakhar, you're a reasonable man. A reasonable man doesn't betray friends. The search went on for 2 hours. They turned the house upside down, searched the shed, even the bathhouse. They found many bear tracks, but all old, no fresh ones. Clever beast, Igor muttered. Smells the trap. Maybe she's already gone, the major suggested. She's still around, I know it. Igor was hiding something. Lena noticed him glancing repeatedly toward the woods at the old oak tree. Grandpa, she whispered, I think they know where Manya is. Igor keeps looking toward the forest. Zakhar followed Igor's gaze and frowned. That oak was Manya's favorite spot. She often rested there on hot days. They were watching her. By midday, the hunters had placed traps throughout the forest. Igor personally handled the cage near the oak, adjusting it for a long time. Is the bait fresh? Asked the major. Fresh as it gets. Linden honey, salted fish. Any bear would go for it. And if she doesn't, she will. I've got solid intel. That evening, the team left, leaving a young gamekeeper on watch, about 20 years old and with smart eyes. He settled in the bushes with a radio and binoculars. Zakhar approached. Name? Alexei. From Novosibirsk. Studied animal behavior in university. So you know bears? Somewhat. Then tell me, Alexei, is it right to trap an animal that's never harmed anyone? The boy was silent. According to protocol, yes. According to conscience, I don't know. What if I tell you this bear's been with us since childhood? Kinder than most people. I believe you. But orders are orders. Zakhar sighed and walked home. Alexei stayed in his ambush. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about Manya. Where was she now? Did she sense the danger? Did she know they were hunting her? At 2 a.m., the sound of breaking branches came from the forest. Lena looked out the window. Nothing visible. It was too dark. But the sounds were coming closer. Zakhar also woke and stepped onto the porch. Manya, is that you? No reply, but the rustling continued. Something large and careful moving through the forest toward the oak. Grandpa, Lena whispered, she's walking into the trap. I know, we have to warn her. How? If I shout, the ranger will hear and alert everyone. Lena threw on her jacket and ran outside. Zakhar tried to stop her, but she was already gone into the dark. Alexei was dozing in the bushes. The long wait had made his eyelids heavy. He heard the cracking of branches, but didn't understand the direction at first. When he did, it was too late. A massive shadow approached the trap. In the moonlight, he saw the bear's snout, the white patch on her chest. Gotcha, he whispered, grabbing his radio. But at that moment, a girl burst through the trees. Manya, don't go there. It's a trap. The bear stopped 2 meters from the cage, turned her head, and recognized Lena. Alexei froze with the radio in hand. It was a surreal sight. A girl standing beside a giant predator, talking to her like a pet. There's a cage, Lena said. You understand? You can't go there. The bear approached the trap, sniffed the metal for a long time, then pushed it with her paw. The mechanism was old and rusty. One more shove, and the structure collapsed. Smart girl, Lena whispered. Manya turned toward the bushes where Alexei sat. She stared at him, long and piercing. The ranger understood. She knew he was there. The bear came closer. Alexei didn't move, barely breathing. The animal stood a meter from him. Huge, powerful, capable of crushing a man with a single blow. But Manya just sniffed him, snorted disdainfully, and walked away. Don't touch the radio, Lena said quietly. If you call backup, it'll be worse. Why? Alexei whispered. Because she protects me, and I protect her. The major yelled. I don't know, Alexei replied honestly. There was a crash at night. In the morning, I found the trap broken. Was the bear here? Maybe. Too dark to tell. Igor examined the shattered metal. This wasn't done by a bear. Needed a crowbar or sledgehammer. Locals helped, the major assumed. They sympathized with the animal. He looked toward Zakhar's house, where Zakhar and Lena stood on the porch. Innocent faces, surprised expressions. No proof, the district officer said. What do we do now? Set more traps. Increase surveillance. But Igor shook his head. Useless. The bear's smart. She won't fall for it again. And her trail's cold. She's gone far. How do you know? Experience. Animals like that don't stay in one place for long. The major cursed, but there was nothing more to do. By evening, the entire team packed up and left. Peace returned to the village. The next few days passed in relative calm. Lena helped her grandfather around the house, chopped wood, weeded the garden, and tried not to think about the bear, though her heart ached. Every rustle in the forest made her flinch. Every gust of wind carried imagined danger. Zakhar pretended everything was fine, but he too often stared into the woods with a faraway look, listening, waiting. They didn't talk much about Manya. It hurt. In the evenings, they sat on the porch in silence, sipping tea and watching the sunset paint the trees gold. One day, Zakhar took out an old hunting knife, sharpened it on a whetstone, and carefully wrapped it in cloth. "What's that for?" Lena asked. "Just in case," he replied. "You never know when you'll need something sharp." "You think they'll come back?" "They always come back when they don't get what they want." That night, Lena dreamt of Manya, young, clumsy, playful, rolling through the grass and licking her face. She woke up in tears. In the morning, a car pulled up to the gate, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, followed by another in uniform. Lena peeked through the curtain, nervous. "They're back," she whispered. Zakhar opened the door calmly and walked out to meet them. "Zakhar Voronov?" the man in the suit asked. "Yes. My name is Dmitry Kravtsov. This is my son Anton. You may have heard of us." "Heard and seen," Zakhar said flatly. "What do you want?" "A conversation, peaceful, without threats." "Fine. Talk." Dmitry looked around, pretending to admire the surroundings. "Nice place, quiet, remote, lots of land." "My land?" "Exactly. That's why I'm here. We're expanding our recreational complex. A tourist base, eco-lodges, wellness retreats. Your house is right in the way. Not my problem. On the contrary, you see, we've acquired rights to the adjacent plots. Yours is the last piece. If you agree to sell, we'll pay generously, more than market value. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life." Zakhar didn't flinch. "Not for sale. Come now, old man. Everyone has a price." "I don't." Anton stepped forward. "Look, you've had your fun. Playing forest hermit, raising wild animals. But the world's changing. It's time to move on," says the boy who wet his pants when the bear showed up. Anton's face reddened. Dmitry held up a hand. "Let's stay civil. I don't want conflict, but understand, one way or another, this land will be ours. Better if it's voluntary. Get off my property." Dmitry's smile vanished. "That's your answer?" "Forever." The two men returned to their car without another word. As they drove away, Lena joined her grandfather on the porch. "What now?" "Now we wait." They won't stop. 2 days later, an official letter arrived from the regional administration. The land was being seized for public use. Zakhar's house declared an obstacle to infrastructure development. A relocation offer was attached. Apartment in the city, modest compensation. Zakhar tore it in half and burned it in the stove. "They're tightening the noose," Lena said quietly. "They'll use any means. We'll see whose rope is stronger." That evening, Vasily Petrovich visited again, somber. "Zakhar, I warned you. They're serious? So am I. There's going to be a commission next week, with power to initiate forced removal. Let them come. They might bring troops, bulldozers. You think you can stop them with a rifle? If I have to?" Vasily sat down, exhausted. "You're a stubborn fool. And you're a good man in a bad uniform. Don't put me in the middle of this." "Too late. You already are." Vasily left without another word. That night, Lena couldn't sleep again. She paced the room, staring out the window. No stars. No wind. A heavy silence. Then, just before dawn, a shadow moved near the gate. Her breath caught. She pressed her face to the glass. It was Manya. The bear stood still, as if carved from stone, then slowly walked up to the porch and lay down across the steps. Lena ran outside barefoot. "You came back," she whispered. "You're here." Zakhar followed, stunned. "Why now?" "She knows," Lena said. "She feels it." Manya looked at them calmly, not afraid, not aggressive, just present, like a guardian. "We can't keep her here," Zakhar said. "They'll shoot her on sight. She's not leaving." "Then we must protect her too." The three of them, man, girl, beast, stood in the pale morning light, united by something deeper than blood. That day, Zakhar began reinforcing the house. He nailed planks over windows, secured doors, checked the cellar. "Preparing for a siege?" Lena joked. "Maybe." In the evening, she called her mother again. "I'm not coming back," she said. "This is where I belong." "With a madman and a bear?" her mother shouted. "With family," Lena replied, "and love." Her mother hung up. The next morning, a new visitor arrived. Igor. He stood awkwardly by the gate, hands in pockets. "What do you want?" Zakhar asked. "To talk. We've heard enough lies from you. I was wrong. I see that now. I want to help." Why? Because I saw her, in the forest. She didn't attack. She could have, but didn't. And because Anton is planning something worse. Zakhar's eyes narrowed. What? Don't know exactly, but I heard him talking to his father. Something about a raid, bulldozers, fake permits, bribes. And you expect us to trust you? Number. But I had to warn you. Zakhar studied the boy's face. He looked older, tired, regretful. If you're lying, I'm not. Igor left without another word. That evening, Manya remained at the gate, unmoving, like a sentinel. As night fell, the forest came alive with unfamiliar sounds, cars, engines, movement. Lena and Zakhar didn't sleep. They sat at the window watching, waiting. At dawn, the horizon filled with vehicles, military trucks, construction equipment, black SUVs. And at their head, Dmitri and Anton. Zakhar took a deep breath and stepped outside in his old military jacket. Lena followed. Manya rose to her feet. The battle for their home had begun. The convoy of vehicles stopped at the edge of the field, raising clouds of dust that slowly drifted toward the trees. Out stepped men in suits, uniforms, and hard hats, carrying clipboards, folders, radios. Anton was among them, smug and triumphant, his eyes scanning the house like a predator sizing up his prey. Zakhar stood firm on the porch in his faded military tunic, the same one he'd worn during his years of service, holding his hunting rifle not as a threat, but as a symbol of who he was, a man of the land, of principles, of stubborn, immovable dignity. Lena stood beside him, clutching an old photograph to her chest, the one of her as a child beside the bear cub. Manya was there too, lying just beyond the gate, massive and silent, her dark fur blending with the earth, her eyes fixed on the intruders. She didn't growl, didn't move. She simply watched. The prosecutor stepped out of one of the vehicles, a large man with a red folder and a forced air of authority. Zakhar Voronov, he called. You are ordered to vacate the premises immediately. This structure has been declared unsafe and will be demolished today under Article 14, Section 5 of the Regional Code. Not leaving, Zakhar interrupted calmly. This is my house, my land, my family. Your property has been officially seized, the prosecutor continued, ignoring the protest. Your refusal to comply constitutes obstruction of state operations. Your papers are fake, Zakhar said. This house is stronger than any of you. I built it with my own hands. It's seen more winters than your offices have seen light bulbs changed. Anton approached the gate, smiling. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We'll give you a nice apartment, compensation, maybe even a medal for cooperation. Take your money and go to hell, Zakhar said evenly. Lena stepped forward and held up the photo. This is my childhood, she said loudly. This place is my home. You're not just destroying a house. You're destroying lives, memories, love. Miss, said one of the officials, please step aside. This is not your concern. It's very much my concern, she replied. The bulldozer operator approached Anton, looking uneasy. You sure about this? That bear's just lying there, but it's tame, Anton snapped. Move the machine forward, tear down the fence, and we'll handle the rest. The engine roared to life. The bulldozer rolled slowly toward the gate. Dust rose. Manya stood up. In the tense silence that followed, time seemed to stop. Her huge frame shifted forward. She stepped directly in front of the gate, planting her paws wide, her shoulders squared like a soldier. The bulldozer operator froze. I'm not doing it, he shouted over the noise. She's not moving. Get out of the cab, Anton yelled. I'll do it myself. He climbed in, slammed the door, gripped the controls with hands that trembled just slightly. The machine lurched forward again. Manya didn't flinch. She reared up on her hind legs, a towering wall of muscle and instinct, and slammed one massive paw into the metal front of the machine. The sound of twisting steel echoed across the clearing. The windshield cracked. Anton screamed and threw the controls into reverse, backing away hastily. Shoot it, someone yelled. Shoot the bear. Officers reached for their weapons. Don't, Vasily Petrovich said, stepping between them and the animal. She's defending, not attacking. We have orders, shouted a junior officer. And I'm countermanding them, Vasily replied. I won't be part of this. You're fired, the prosecutor yelled. Fine, Vasily said. Then I'm fired. A voice from the woods interrupted the chaos. You won't need those weapons. All heads turned. Igor stepped out of the trees, dressed in camouflage, a rifle slung over his shoulder, not pointed, just present. She's protecting what matters. Maybe the rest of us should try that for once. Anton leapt from the bulldozer. You traitor, he spat. I trusted you. You used me, Igor said calmly. You lied, manipulated, threatened. This end now. You think you're a hero? Anton sneered. No, Igor said. I think I'm finally a man. A black SUV pulled up at the rear of the convoy. Doors opened. Out stepped a tall man in an impeccable suit, flanked by aides. "Who's that?" whispered Lena. "Gromov," Vasily Petrovich said, "Deputy Governor for Ecology." Dmitry Kravtsov went pale. "What is he doing here?" Gromov approached slowly, holding a file. "Gentlemen," he said, voice calm but firm. "There's been a serious complaint lodged against this operation. I'm here to investigate." "With respect, sir," the prosecutor began. "Silence," Gromov said. "Mr. Kravtsov, you and your son are accused of corruption, abuse of office, and unlawful seizure of protected land. The evidence includes audio recordings, photos, and falsified documents. Care to comment?" "That's absurd," Dmitry snapped. "We followed every procedure." "We have your voice on tape," Gromov said, instructing staff to fabricate a structural damage report. "We also have statements from regional inspectors who were pressured to sign it." "Who filed the complaint?" Anton asked, voice shaking. "I did," said Igor. "I sent everything to the governor's office." "You little—" Anton lunged, but Igor sidestepped him. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," he said. "You're nothing without your father's money." Gromov turned to Zakhar. "Mr. Voronov, on behalf of the regional government, I apologize. The demolition order is hereby revoked. Your home is safe." Zakhar nodded. "Thank you." "As for the bear," Gromov continued, "we are declaring her a protected local species under special conservation status. No one will harm her." Manya, as if understanding, lowered her massive head and sat. The tension broke. The convoy began to disperse. Officers holstered weapons. Bulldozers shut down. Officials climbed into vehicles, now quiet and subdued. Kravtsov Sr. was escorted to a car by two aides, pale and silent. Anton stood alone for a moment, then shouted, "This isn't over," but no one listened. As the last car drove away, Lena burst into tears. Zakhar put an arm around her. Igor stood a few paces back, unsure. "Come inside," Zakhar said. "Have tea with us." They sat on the porch, cups steaming, the forest peaceful again. "You did the right thing," Lena told Igor. "It cost you a lot." "Not as much as silence would have," he replied. Zakhar pulled a small object from his pocket, the old medallion. He opened it. Inside were two photographs, one of a young man in uniform, the other of a woman in white. "She would have been proud," he said quietly. Manya lay at the gate until dusk, then stood, stretched, and looked at them one last time. She turned and walked toward the forest, slowly, with dignity. "She's leaving," Lena said. "She did her part," Zakhar replied. "Time to live her own life again." They watched her until she disappeared between the trees. The light faded. The forest returned to itself. But the memory of what had happened would remain, not as a tale of man versus power, but of loyalty, courage, and a bear who, after the officials left and the last echoes of engines faded into the distance, the village seemed to exhale in relief. The tension that had built up over the past days dissolved like mist under the morning sun. Zakhar, Lena, and Igor sat long into the evening on the veranda, saying little. The teacups sat empty, forgotten on the wooden table, while the stars blinked above them, one by one piercing the veil of dusk. Remembered kindness. The forest had gone quiet again, as though it too was recovering from the invasion. Only the crickets and the rustle of distant leaves reminded them of life beyond the stillness. "You think she'll come back?" Lena finally asked, her voice almost a whisper. Zakhar didn't answer right away. He looked toward the edge of the forest where they had last seen Manya disappear, her great form fading like a shadow among the trees. "Maybe," he said at last. "If she wants to. She's earned her freedom." Igor nodded, but there was something unsettled in his gaze, something unspoken weighing on him. "They won't stop," he said. "Kravtsov might be down for now, but men like him always find new ways. They'll wait, try a different route. That land, it's too valuable to them." "Let them try," Zakhar said. "Now we have attention. Now we have the law on our side. And we have each other." The next few days passed in a strange calm. Lena helped around the house, chopping wood, baking bread, repairing the chicken coop with Zakhar. Igor stayed too, saying he had nowhere to go for now, and that he could help set up some legal defenses, talk to journalists, file more papers to protect the property permanently. He spent hours on his phone and laptop, coordinating with advocacy groups and ecological watchdogs. Lena watched him sometimes from the garden and wondered at how much he had changed. The boy who had once laughed at the village girl now stood in rubber boots, covered in mud, hammering fence posts and speaking to reporters about the preservation of rural life and endangered species. One morning she brought him a thermos of tea while he was sitting on a fallen log, typing furiously into his laptop. "You become someone else," she said. He looked up and smiled sheepishly. "Number, I think I've just become who I should have been all along." That afternoon, a letter arrived. It was hand-delivered by a courier on a motorbike and bore the official seal of the regional governor's office. Zakhar opened it carefully, his fingers trembling slightly. Lena and Igor leaned over his shoulders to read. It was a decree recognizing the house and the adjacent forest strip as a cultural and natural heritage zone, granting them protection against commercial development. It also included a personal note from Deputy Governor Gromov, thanking Zakhar for his courage and inviting him to speak at an upcoming environmental summit. Zakhar chuckled. "Me? Speak at a summit?" "Why not?" Lena said. "You have more wisdom in your little finger than most of those men in suits." "And a bear to back it up," Igor added, but Zakhar's smile faded. "This isn't about me. It's about something bigger, a way of life, a connection to the land, and a promise we made to a creature who trusted us." That night, they lit a small fire in the yard and sat around it, telling stories. Zakhar spoke of his younger years, of hunting trips with Nika, of the long winters when the snow came up to the windowsills, of the spring flood that once carried away half the fence. Lena shared tales from the city, of crowded buses and university corridors, of sleepless nights and distant dreams. Igor listened, occasionally adding his own fragments, a life of expectations, of doing what was told, of realizing too late what really mattered. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on their faces. A rustle in the bushes made them pause, but it was only an owl sweeping silently across the sky. The next morning, the local school teacher stopped by. She had read about the events in the newspaper and wanted to invite Zakhar to speak to her students. "They need to hear your story," she said. "They need to know that kindness still means something, that bravery doesn't always wear a uniform." Zakhar hesitated but agreed. That week, he and Lena visited the school. The children listened wide-eyed as he spoke, not just about the bear, but about living with nature, respecting the forest, and understanding that every creature, no matter how wild, has its place. One small boy raised his hand and asked, "Will the bear come back?" Zakhar smiled. "Maybe, but even if she doesn't, she's part of this place now, just like you." After the talk, the children drew pictures of bears, of log houses, of trees and stars. One girl handed Zakhar a crayon drawing of Manya lying in front of a wooden gate. "She's protecting you," the girl said. Zakhar nodded, blinking back tears. As the weeks passed, things began to return to normal. The threat of demolition faded, though occasional letters still arrived from Kravtsov's lawyers, now desperate and disorganized. Igor helped Zakhar file a countersuit, citing harassment and attempted land fraud. The regional media picked up the story again, calling it "the bear that stopped the bulldozers." Tourists began to visit the village, hoping for a glimpse of Manya, though she never appeared. Still, they came, city folk in designer hiking boots, snapping selfies in front of Zakhar's gate. Some asked for guided tours. Zakhar refused most of them, but allowed a local ecologist to conduct a small nature walk once a week. Lena started a blog documenting the history of the house and the forest, posting photos and stories. It gained followers quickly, especially after she uploaded a video of Zakhar recounting the day Manya had stood her ground. Comments flooded in, messages of support, donations, offers to help.
One evening, they received a package. Inside was a small wooden statue, beautifully carved, depicting a bear curled around a cottage. There was no note, just the initials RG etched on the base. Gromov, Igor guessed, must have had it commissioned. Summer slowly turned to autumn. The leaves shifted to gold and crimson, the nights grew cooler. Life settled into a rhythm again, slow, deliberate, peaceful. But one thing had changed. They were no longer alone. The village that had once been forgotten was now watched over, not just by Manya, who they still sensed was nearby, but by people, organizations, even the government, and most importantly, by each other. Zakhar, Lena and Igor became something like a family. Not perfect, not planned, but real. They cooked together, argued, planted a new row of apple trees behind the barn, and sometimes, when the wind blew just right, they would catch a familiar scent, earth, fur, forest, and look toward the trees, wondering if she was watching too. Then they would smile and return to their lives, comforted by the thought that loyalty, once earned, never truly leaves. The first frost came early that year, turning the grass brittle and silver in the mornings. The forest, once alive with rustling green, was now hushed in gold and bronze, preparing for winter's sleep. Lena had grown used to the rhythm of rural life. She no longer checked her phone for city notifications, no longer counted the days until university deadlines. Her fingers, once soft from typing, were now calloused from firewood and rope. She knew the routine: wake at dawn, feed the chickens, carry water from the well, help Zakar in the shed, then read in the evenings by the fire. Igor had taken over the task of installing a solar panel someone had donated through Lena's blog. He said it was important for them to have a bit of independence, especially with winter coming. Together, the three of them had patched the roof, restocked food supplies, and reinforced the cellar. But even as the days grew shorter and the cold deepened, there was a sense of security in their routines, as if the household itself had regained its heartbeat. Then one morning, a letter arrived. It was marked with the same regional seal as before, but this time the envelope was thin, without the weight of official decrees. Inside was an invitation to an award ceremony in the city, where Zakar was to be honored for services to ecological preservation and rural heritage. Zakar laughed when he read it. Me? An award? All I did was not move. That's exactly why they want to honor you, Lena said. Because you stayed when everyone else would have run. Zakar frowned. I didn't do it for medals. We know, Igor said, but sometimes people need symbols. They need to see that someone stood up and it mattered. The ceremony was scheduled for the following week. Lena offered to go with Zakar, while Igor stayed behind to watch the house. They traveled by train, an old slow route that carved through the mountains like a silver thread. For Zakar, it was the first time in years he had left the village. He sat stiffly in his seat, clutching a canvas bag and glancing out the window with narrowed eyes, as if the outside world might try something. Lena held his hand. It's just for a day, she said. Then we'll be home again. The city loomed grey and vast, a tangle of the buildings and noise. Zakar walked through it like a ghost from another time, ignoring the stares from polished passers-by in long coats and shining shoes. At the government hall, reporters snapped photos and officials in suits clapped politely as Zakar shuffled onto the stage. A man in a blue sash handed him a medal, while a woman read a speech about bravery and conservation. Zakar stood silently, then finally leaned into the microphone. I didn't do this alone, he said. A bear helped me, and a girl, and a boy, and a lot of good people who remembered what home means. That's all. The room was quiet for a moment, then someone clapped, then another. Then the whole hall was on its feet. Afterward, reporters swarmed them. Will you write a book? Is the bear really tame? What's next for the hero of the taiga? Zakar waved them off. Next I go home. On the return train, Lena nestled against his shoulder, the medal wrapped in a handkerchief in her bag. You were amazing, she said. I told the truth, that's all. That's what made it amazing. Back in the village, Igor had cleaned the house top to bottom. He'd even baked bread, though it came out flat and a little burnt. Still warm, he said sheepishly as they sat to eat. That night they lit the stove and told stories again, but this time there was a lightness to it, as if a weight had finally lifted. But the peace didn't last. A week later, Igor returned from town with a strange look on his face. There's trouble, he said. Kravtsov's land agent. He's been going around neighboring plots, buying them up quietly. He's planning something. Let him, Zakar said. Our land's protected now. Yes, but if he surrounds your property, he can isolate it, cut off access, make your life impossible. We have the road. For now, but he can apply for a rezoning, argue it's for public infrastructure, and if he owns everything around you, Zakar cursed under his breath, so the vulture still circling. Lena slammed her mug on the table. We'll fight again if we have to. Igor nodded. I've already sent notices to the environmental board and Gromov, but we should be ready. They won't try the same trick. It'll be legal, technical, boring, but just as dangerous. The next few weeks were tense. Surveyors appeared at the edge of the forest, measuring with cold precision. Trucks rolled past more often, and a new sign was posted at the old junction. Future site of the Northern Development Hub. Lena took photos and sent them to journalists. Igor drafted complaints. Zakhar made calls to allies, but the machine was moving again. At night, the forest felt unsettled. The wind howled longer, the owls flew lower, and then one night there were tracks. Huge, unmistakable bear prints near the edge of the orchard. "She's back," Zakhar whispered. But the prints didn't stop at the fence. They continued toward the road, toward the new machines. That morning, they found one of the surveyor tripods toppled, bent and covered in claw marks. "She's warning them," Lena said. "Or warning us," Igor added, "that something's coming." And something did. Bulldozers arrived again. Not for Zakhar's land, yet, but for the plot next door, recently acquired by a shell company linked to Kravtsov. Trees fell, the air filled with the scent of torn earth. The village shook with every crash. Zakhar watched, fists clenched, from the veranda. "They'll box us in, one fence at a time." "Then we stop them now," Lena said, "before it's too late." That evening, she posted another video. It went viral, her voice trembling with anger, her eyes wide with determination. "They promised to leave us in peace, they lied, again, but we're still here. We're not moving, and we're not alone." The next day, cars began to arrive. Strangers from the city, environmentalists, students, journalists. They came with tents, with signs, with cameras. They set up camp along the road, chanting slogans and singing songs. It was the beginning of something new, a resistance. Zakhar stood among them, bewildered but grateful. Lena organized supplies. Igor coordinated legal observers. And at night by the fire, someone would always ask, "Do you think the bear will come again?" Zakhar would nod. "If she needs to, she will." And deep in the forest, Manya listened. She smelled the machines, the oil, the sweat of men who didn't belong, and she remembered. The voices, the hands that fed her, the girl who cried when they said goodbye, the man who carried her through snow. She remembered the gate, the porch, the warmth. She turned toward the lights in the distance, toward the house, and began to walk. The night before the confrontation, the forest held its breath. The people who had gathered near Zakhar's house slept uneasily in tents pitched along the roadside, lanterns flickering in the cold wind. Some of them stayed up in shifts, keeping watch, afraid the machines might come under cover of darkness. Lena couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch, wrapped in an old woolen blanket, listening to the creaks of the house and the distant murmurs of the forest. Zakhar sat beside her, smoking in silence, the glow of his cigarette briefly illuminating the lines on his weathered face. "Do you think they'll try something tonight?" Lena asked. Zakhar shook his head. "Number they want to show. They'll come in daylight, cameras rolling, witnesses present. That way, when they crush us, they'll say it was all legal." Lena pulled the blanket tighter. "But they won't crush us. Not this time." Zakhar looked at her, the smoke curling around his face. "Only because you're here, and him too." He nodded toward Igor, who was checking supplies with a group of volunteers near the barn. "You've given this place a voice. I never had one, just a rifle and a stubborn heart." Lena rested her head against his shoulder. "You gave it a soul. That's what people are here to defend." In the distance, a low rumble echoed through the valley, the unmistakable sound of heavy engines moving. They were coming. At dawn, the first bulldozers appeared at the edge of the clearing. Behind them came government vans, black SUVs, and a line of uniformed police officers. The protesters stirred from their tents, pulling on coats and boots, grabbing banners and cameras. Zakhar stood tall at the gate, his rifle slung over one shoulder. Lena was beside him, eyes blazing, holding a folder filled with documents, evidence, complaints, declarations. Igor climbed onto an overturned crate and addressed the crowd. "But for something bigger, for every place they think they can erase." Applause rippled through the crowd. The police formed a line, shields raised, batons hanging at their sides. A man in a dark coat with a government badge stepped forward and read from a folder. This area is designated for regional development. All unauthorized gatherings must disperse immediately. Failure to comply will result in removal. Zakhar stepped forward. This is my land, my home, and these people are my guests. The official didn't flinch. You're in violation of state property ordinances. Then the state is in violation of common sense. Tension thickened like fog. Cameras rolled. Journalists whispered into microphones. Then, just as the bulldozers started to move, a roar came from the forest. Low, powerful, unmistakable. Heads turned. The roar came again, closer this time. Trees shook, birds scattered, and then she appeared. Manya. Towering, massive, her fur thick and dark, her eyes sharp and aware. She stepped out from the trees and into the clearing, moving slowly, deliberately, like a queen returning to her throne. The crowd gasped. Police lowered their shields. A reporter dropped his mic. Manya walked past the line of tents, ignoring the people, the machines, the noise. She walked straight to the gate, to Zakhar, and stopped. Her head tilted slightly, nostrils flaring. Lena stepped forward, tears in her eyes. She remembers. Manya lowered her head. Zakhar reached out slowly and placed a hand on her massive shoulder. You're right on time, girl. Behind them, confusion erupted. The officials scrambled. The bulldozer halted. One officer lifted his radio, calling for backup, but the crowd had already surged forward, forming a protective ring around the house and the bear. The government official shouted, "This animal is a threat to public safety." Igor shouted back, "This animal has protected more people than your entire department." Someone yelled, "She's not wild, she's home." A chant began, "She stays. We stay." Over and over. The police hesitated. No one wanted to be the first to move against a bear surrounded by cameras and civilians. Manya let out another low growl. Not angry, just a warning. A presence. She turned and sat down at the gate, her massive frame a living barrier between the house and the machines. The stalemate stretched on for hours. The officials tried negotiating, but Zakhar refused to step inside. Lena gave interviews. Igor handled calls from the governor's office. Eventually, as the sun began to set, the police received orders to stand down. The machines were shut off. The black SUVs drove away. The officials promised to review the situation. The crowd erupted in cheers. But no one moved. They knew it wasn't over. That night, Manya slept on the porch, curled into a ball, her breath misting in the cold air. Zakhar covered her with a woolen tarp. "She's earned a warm night," he said. Lena lay in bed but couldn't sleep. She kept looking out the window, watching Manya's steady breathing. The next morning, a drone buzzed over the forest. Igor shut it down with the slingshot. More officials arrived, but this time they were from environmental agencies. Gromov had sent reinforcements, not soldiers, but scientists. They took samples, documented the habitat, and interviewed Zakhar about the local fauna. One of them, a woman in her 40s, whispered to Lena, "If the reports are accurate, this bear might be the only one of her subspecies in the region. That makes her protected, legally untouchable." Lena smiled. "She's more than that. She's a survivor." Days passed. The bulldozers were towed away. A fence was put up, not around Zakhar's house but around the new protected zone officially named Maya Reserve. The papers called it a miracle of grassroots resistance. The government tried to spin it as a PR success. Kravtsov went silent. No more offers, no more threats, just silence. Then one evening, as Lena brought fresh bread out to the porch, Manya stood up, stretched, and walked to the edge of the clearing. She paused, looked back once at the house, at Zakhar, at Lena. Then she disappeared into the forest. "Will she come back?" Lena asked. Zakhar put an arm around her. "When we need her, or when she needs us. That's how family works." The wind rustled the trees gently, like a whisper of thanks, and somewhere deep in the forest, Manya walked tall, not as a fugitive, but as a guardian, a legend, a memory that walked on four powerful legs, reminding the world that love, real love, leaves tracks that never fade. That evening, they sat on the veranda, Zakhar, Lena, and Igor, sipping tea in silence, each processing the events of the past few days in their own way. The tension slowly easing from their shoulders, though the weight of the moment still lingered. The air smelled of chamomile and fresh rain, and the distant murmur of the forest seemed more like a lullaby than a threat. Igor. Lena finally broke the silence, her voice soft but firm. Why did you really do it? You were Anton's friend. Why turn against him? Igor looked into his mug for a long moment before replying. He was my friend. But friendship built on lies, cruelty, and greed isn't friendship at all. I finally saw that. We were doing something monstrous, and I couldn't live with it anymore. Zakhar gave a subtle nod, as if confirming something he had suspected all along. And you don't regret it? Lena asked. No, Igor answered, this time without hesitation. For the first time in years, I feel like a man again. Zakhar pulled something from his pocket, the old locket that had belonged to Nina. He opened it, revealing the tiny photographs inside. You know, child, he said to Lena, I understood something important today. Something your grandmother always told me, that kindness always comes back. We once saved a bear cub, and now the bear has saved us. That's how the world should be. Lena smiled, her eyes wet. She stood and walked to the edge of the veranda, gazing out into the quiet forest. Though it was dark and no creature stirred, she knew, deep in her bones, that somewhere out there, in the deepest part of the taiga, Manya was finding a place to sleep, curling up beneath her favorite spruce tree, just as she had done since cubhood. Grandpa, Lena whispered, without turning around, do you think she knows we haven't forgotten her? Zakhar came to stand beside her, his warm hand settling on her shoulder. She knows. Animals like her, they feel it. And do you think we'll ever see her again? Lena asked, voice trembling slightly. Zakhar smiled, the kind of smile that comes not from certainty, but from hope and faith. We will. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year. But we will. True family never disappears forever. In the forest, the great bear was indeed settling in for the night. She nosed the earth gently, tested the air, and then let her massive frame fall gently to the mossy ground. The wind carried scents that made her pause, the familiar smells of smoke from the chimney, of baked bread, of ripe apples from the old tree. Home. She had no words for it, but in her heart, she knew her people were safe. Her duty had been fulfilled for now. The week that followed passed quietly. No new threats came, no officials returned, and no heavy machines roared through the village paths. Lena called her mother, trying again to explain her decision to stay. The conversation was tense. Her mother didn't understand. How could anyone choose a quiet, forgotten village over a prestigious university in the capital? You've lost your mind, her mother had snapped. There's nothing there but old men and animals. But Lena stood her ground. I like it here. I need time to understand what I really want from life. And Grandpa, he needs someone. That's not weakness. It's family. Her mother accused Zakhar of manipulating her, of using his loneliness as a weapon. He's an old selfish man who couldn't let your grandmother go, and now he's dragging you down with him. Lena ended the call with tears in her eyes. She sat on the porch for a long time, watching the dusk fall. Zakhar brewed her a cup of hot tea and sat beside her in silence. You fought with your mother, he said gently. Lena nodded. She thinks you're selfish. Maybe she's right. Zakhar didn't flinch. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm just an old man too stubborn to change. Lena turned to him, her eyes fierce. You're not selfish. You're someone who needs family, like anyone else. And I've made my choice. I'm not ready to leave yet. Zakhar didn't reply, but his silence was full of gratitude. That Saturday, Igor returned. This time he came not with threats or weapons, but with tools and timber. "I thought I'd help fix the fence," he said. Zakhar didn't answer, just handed him a hammer. For hours they worked side by side, not speaking much, but gradually building something more than just a fence. Lena brought them lemonade and watched from the porch. "Looks like you found a second apprentice, Grandpa." Zakhar chuckled. "This one needs more training, but he might turn out all right." As the sun dipped low, the three of them sat on the steps, tired but content. "You know," Igor said thoughtfully, "I used to hate this place. Thought it was boring, backward. But now, it feels like something real, like the kind of place that matters." Lena smiled. "It always was. You just didn't see it before." Igor nodded. "Guess I needed a bear to open my eyes." That night, as they shared stories and laughter, Lena pulled out the old photo album. They looked through it together. Pictures of a tiny bear cub in her arms, of summer days by the river, of Nina in her wedding dress. It was more than nostalgia. It was proof that life had always been rich here, full of meaning. Zakhar closed the album and said, "People like Kravtsov think power is about bulldozers and documents. But real power, the kind that matters, is this."